Welcome back to Active Self-Protection Extra on John's Briefs. Today we have Mark Victor from Attorneys for Freedom. Mark's a friend of mine, one of the premier attorneys, not just in Arizona now in Hawaii.
That's true.
Good job, man. Congrats on that, on expanding the practice.
Thank you.
And we had an interesting discussion in a previous John's Briefs, and I wanted to expand on it on the official kind of duty to retreat, but maybe how practically it's not, maybe it's different as you think. Today's video is brought to us by Firearms Legal Protection. Firearms Legal Protection is a legal defense program for lawful gun owners with a 24/7 emergency hotline and plans designed specifically for self-defenders. They are offering a discount on their plan to Asp fans, so hit the link in the description for that. So Mark, you talked with me about this and you're like, look, man, Hawaii and Arizona have very different statutes here. You want to explain the difference?
Yeah, and it's been real interesting for me because, practicing in Arizona for 25 years and being around what I would say the pro-gun guys and talking to them about being responsible. It's not just your right to carry a firearm. You have a responsibility, a legal responsibility that you're going to be held to.
And a moral one.
And a moral one, I agree with that you won't be held to through the law, but there are maybe other mechanisms that matter in the world. And so, we always talk about that Arizona has no duty to retreat in a very proud kind of a way. Well, since I've been licensed in Hawaii, I've had occasion to very carefully go through some of the Hawaii statutes in this area, do a little of comparing and contrasting. And Hawaii's rule is very different. It's really the opposite end of the spectrum. In Hawaii, what they say is...
Hawaii, very restrictive state, one of the most restrictive states in the union for firearms law.
One of the worst, most unfree states in the entire nation, but one of the greatest places you could ever go visit.
Beautiful, just really egregiously bad laws.
There are wonderful people there, and the aloha spirit is really fantastic. And part of my sort of marketing strategy in Hawaii is to bring more aloha, which I define as live and let live, to the aloha state. And so the people who are into freedom in Hawaii are very excited about the new vibe we're bringing to Hawaii. But in any event, I want to focus in on this difference that I have thought about a little bit, because Hawaii's rule is a retreat state. And so you have to understand what this means. First of all, we're only talking about a situation where you're going to use deadly physical force. So you don't have to retreat if it's ordinary physical force. Okay. So we're talking about mostly you're getting ready to pull your firearm and maybe discharge a round or something in that neighborhood. And so what Hawaii says is, if you are planning to use deadly force, you must first retreat, but only if you can do so in complete safety. And you never have to retreat, like many of the retreat states, in your home. This is why we call it the castle doctrine. Because your home is your castle. You don't have to retreat from your castle or from work. You don't have to retreat if you're at work. So that's the general outline. And I've started thinking about some hypotheticals where maybe this would make an extreme difference. And the first time we ever brought it up was this other video that we talked about with the fellow in the truck. And really, I think that at the end of the day and in the final analysis, given that in both places we're talking about reasonableness, in both places we're talking about the imminency of a threat, I don't think it plays out that differently. But if you read in the Hawaii statutes and you read the comments to the different rules, in essence what they say is, look, we understand that some people may say that our duty to retreat means you got to be a coward and you have to retreat. And we recognize that, and some people don't like that. But what we're saying with this policy is we'd rather encourage you to be a coward than have a deadly physical force if it's actually not necessary. If you can retreat in complete safety, we'd rather you take that tact and let's sort it out in court.
And I think that's the big distinction here, is incomplete safety.
That is a big point.
So, I mean, if you say, well, wait a minute, why didn't you retreat? Because it would have put me at risk of being harmed. And
no
so
problem.
It wasn't complete safety. If I don't have the ability, then I don't have the duty.
Right. So think about it in terms of a hypothetical, all right? Imagine a situation where we have, for the moment, let's consider it an imminent threat of death or serious physical injury. You got your firearm. You have every right to pull it out and use the firearm, which let's say under Arizona's rule, you'd be completely justified. But under Hawaii's rule, we look at it and say, could you have retreated in complete safety? And if you say, look, it wasn't complete safety, if I had turned around, he would have shot me or something, no problem.
We're done. Yeah.
But if the truth is that you actually could have retreated in complete safety, Hawaii is simply saying, under those circumstances, even though you would have been justified using it, we still prefer that you retreat. You know, I think reasonable minds can disagree on this. And again, I'm not taking a position on the rule. It's a matter of public policy, right? What rule do we want out there in the world for people who are carrying firearms to think about? And I gotta say, I don't think it's a terrible idea to say, if you can just get out of there and complete, I mean, it's what we say anyways.
Yes, from a practical perspective, right? So you look at things from the legal perspective as a lawyer, right? I am a firearms trainer, and so I look at things from that perspective, tactics, and what's my best practices. And I always tell people, if you can get out of there without using deadly force, get out of there. I mean, if you can, because you're going to get punished by the process otherwise, and you'd always rather not have all of that. So if you can, you should. And now I'm interested in your thoughts. I haven't primed Mark on this, so this is, you know, legit discussion right here. Because when I talk in my classes and with students and on my channels, I talk about the paradigm of can, should, and must.
Right.
And so in more of your what is maybe colloquially and inappropriately called stand your ground states, I get asked all the time, can I shoot someone in this instance, John? Could I draw my firearm and shoot this guy? I get asked that quite a bit. And I say that's the wrong question to ask. So there's times where, particularly where you're statutorily protected, you can shoot somebody. But the better question is, should I shoot him? And even the better question is, must I? If I must, otherwise I am going to get hurt badly, or have great physical injury or death, or somebody I love is going to experience great physical injury or death, nobody's going to give you a hard time anywhere in the U.S. on that.
Right.
Sometimes you ask, should. Gosh, if I don't shoot him right now, the risk is really great. Then in most places you're going to be okay. And some of these can I? Those are where you go, well, somewhat that depends on where you are. But for me as a tactical guy, I say, if it's not should or must, then I don't even want to ask the question. Do something else instead if you have the ability.
Yeah, I like to boil it down because, like you, I get asked this question all the time. Every time I speak at a gun show, I'll get a hypothetical.
Can I shoot a guy who?
Yeah, well, imagine these circumstances, Mark. There's this. Can I shoot him? What you're really asking me is, Mark, I want you to predict for me whether a randomly selected group of people from the community will find that what I did was reasonable. I don't think it's a good position for you to be in, right? So what I tell people, because I want to communicate to them something that gets the point across and that they can do very quickly. So what I tell them is I paint a paradigm, sort of a picture of what it is like to be prosecuted. And I paint a very negative picture of what it's like to be prosecuted because
it's a very negative thing.
For anybody who's been prosecuted, and I've been prosecuted, my story's right there on my, if you go to Attorneys for Freedom, on the home page, you can see my story about being prosecuted. It's not fun to be prosecuted. It changes your life. But I tell people that if what is about to happen, if you don't pull out your firearm, is worse than being prosecuted,
then do it.
Then pull it out. And then I give them examples. You're going to be dead if you don't pull out. Would you rather be dead or prosecuted? I guess I prefer prosecuted.
Right.
So pull it out. Somebody you love or like a lot is going to be dead. Same answer. And then I give an example from my practice. I had a guy come into my law firm one time who pulled out his firearm and threatened another person. And I asked him why he did it. And he said, I was being disrespected by the other person. So I treat that. Let's look at it. Would you rather be disrespected or prosecuted? I'd much rather, and nobody likes being disrespected, right? And we should all try to avoid disrespecting people, but disrespect me all day long before you prosecute me, right?
Yes.
So that's how I handle that question. I think it's a very good way to say it better be really serious before you pull out your firearm. Not that somebody's pissing you off. Not that somebody said something that annoyed you. Not that, you just want to show who's boss of the situation. None of that is a good time to pull out your firearm.
Well, and I think that, again, from a firearms trainer's perspective, I tell people this all the time. I like living in Arizona where I have more statutory protections of me as a defender. That said, from a practical perspective, ignore any kind of stand your ground statute from a practical perspective. If you can retreat, that's the smart play because you have less risk of injury and less risk of problems. It's a smart play. And then I think you're right, except for in the very edge cases, it really at the end of the day doesn't matter as much as sometimes we think it does.
Yeah, remember at the bottom of all of this, forget about all the statutes, forget about the jury instructions. At the bottom of all of this is the one word, reasonableness. So think to your head, of the people who live in my community, if they knew everything about the facts and circumstances of what's going on right now, would they think it's reasonable? Not my buddies,
Right.
not the guys who watch this channel or go to the gun shows.
Yeah, no.
The people who live in the community, will they think that me pulling out my firearm right now is a reasonable thing to do? If the answer is yes, you're okay. If the answer is no, you're in big trouble. And if you're not sure,
The answer is no.
the answer is no, right? You better get out of there safely.
So it's an important issue, and I totally get that we have strong opinions about it, but let's be careful how it's applied. Listen to Mark's advice, guys. Mark, I really appreciate you giving us the knowledge.
Thanks for having me, man.